Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in today. As you may or may not know, we're taking a little break from our regular content, but trouble is I get bored and antsy and I need to do stuff, so I thought I would take this moment to share with you guys a little fan edit I did, and hopefully this one I can show you guys. I'm going to do my best to put it at the tail end of this episode and avoid any sort of copyright strikes. If you notice that the footage may be altered a bit or flipped horizontally or something like that, it's to avoid copyright issues. So even though this is a horror channel, we do of course like other movies outside that genre, and I've always had a silly little soft spot for Kickboxer 2. Growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, Jean-Claude Van Damme was the guy, and two of my favorite martial arts action movies as a kid were Bloodsport and Kickboxer. And if you haven't already, please feel free to go check out our VHS Tales episode on Bloodsport to get a little backstory here. When I was a kid, I always knew there was a Kickboxer sequel. Actually, multiple sequels, because I remember seeing the VHS tape on the shelves at the rental store. And I'd never make my mom spend her hard-earned money renting a Kickboxer sequel that didn't have Jean-Claude Van Damme in it. It wasn't probably about until 1994 or so when I saw Kickboxer 2 in the TV guide. It was playing late night on cable television. I stayed up late one Saturday night to finally check out Kickboxer 2. And I must say, I was pleasantly surprised. I actually really dug Kickboxer 2. They did a pretty good job writing the script around the absence of Jean-Claude Van Damme, focusing on the youngest brother of the kickboxing Sloan family. It has a pretty stacked cast. Like, come on, look at this. Peter Boyle is in this movie. He, of course, is a great actor in tons of things. I, of course, always remembered him being the monster in Young Frankenstein when I was a kid. Sasha Mitchell is in this. He's best known as being on the TV show Step by Step. Kari Hiroki Tagawa is in this, and he's probably best known for being Shang Tsung in the Mortal Kombat movie, but he was in tons of things. John Deal from Miami Vice is in this. Dennis Chan reprises his role from the original movie, and so does Mohamed Qissi, who returns as the villainous Tong-Po. Mohamed Qissi at the time was actually Jean-Claude Van Damme's best friend. And come on, Tong-Po is one of the best villains from late 80s martial arts action movies. Who as a kid wasn't scared shitless of Tong-Po? I went to bed having nightmares of this guy. And Mohamed Qissi in real life is actually a super nice guy. Kickboxer 2 is actually more of a drama than a martial arts movie. It has a much more grittier, darker, realistic tone than the original movie, and it's a pretty solid movie except for one thing: the fight scenes. Especially the final fight at the end between David Sloan and Tong-Po. It fucking blows major balls. Plain and simple, it is boring. It lacks any emotion or dynamic, and you're not invested in this fight whatsoever. It really is a shitty bedsheet draped upon a pretty decent sequel. There's two huge issues with this fight scene. First of all is almost the entire thing is in slow motion. And when I mean slow motion, I mean slow motion. Slow motion in fight scenes is great to build tension and dynamic, but when the whole fight is slow motion, oh my god, it's boring and it puts you to sleep, and it makes this scene seem like it's 10 minutes longer than it really is. The second issue with this fight scene is the lack of a good musical score. There's some music in this scene, but it's pretty boring, and it's not energetic. It doesn't help build the drama. It doesn't heighten anything. It would be hard to top Paul Herzog's score from the original Kickboxer. Like, come on, it's kick-ass, but no music would have been just as good as the music they used for this. So let's take a look at what I did to improve this fight scene before I show it to you. The first thing I did was sped the fucker up. Like, I made splices in every slow motion shot, and there were tons of cuts and edits. And I sped them up to what felt to me like a more realistic speed in a real fight. And some of these shots, man, I sped up more than 50%. This was a vast improvement and gave the fight a lot more energy. I left some shots in as slow motion just to give it a bit of dynamic. The next thing I had to do was add different music. I had to somehow ditch the old music though, so I was lucky enough where the original score for this fight is fairly low in the mix. So I put a noise gate on that track and gated out all the music and was able to keep in a good chunk of all the sound effects from the punches and the kicks. Next was to add new music. And the first thing I tried to do was actually plop in the music from the original Kickboxer score by Paul Herzog. But I felt that was lazy, and it actually didn't really work well in the first place because Kickboxer 2 is a darker, grittier movie. So I had to compose music from the ground up. I used gear from that time period, the early 90s, late 80s. So for the drums, I used an Alesis SR16 drum machine. And for the synthesizer, I used a Kurzweil K2000, which you can see is old enough that it takes floppy disks. The challenge was to make a score that was not only of the time period, but suited the movie and also was in the spirit of Paul Herzog's original music from the first movie. And I think I did an okay job. But for the last part of this fight scene, and this really is the cherry on the cake here, and a hugely missed opportunity by the original filmmakers, I took the song My Brother's Eyes by Eric Barnett, which plays during the opening credits of Kickboxer 2, and put it on top of the ass end of this fight scene where David Sloan has his huge comeback against Tong-Po. Why they didn't do this in the first place completely boggles me because they already had the music, it works perfectly, and it's 10 times, a gazillion times better than what they used in the final cut of the movie. So right now I'll shut up so I can show you my edit. If you haven't seen the original movie or the original fight scene yet, feel free to head on to Tubi, I believe the movie's still up there, to check it out and then compare it to my cut. If you notice the footage looks a little wonky, maybe flipped or altered in a way, it's because I did it to avoid any copyright issues. So, watch it and let me know what you think.
all the slums.
David. David! I see no fat lady. I hear no singing. So it's not over yet. Concentrate. The most fierce weapon is the human mind. Now go kick his ass and let's go home.
I'm moving ahead, constantly driven. My heart's torn deep.
Remember,
I feel
sometimes when you're blind, time seems darkest.
familiar eyes.
You can often see more clearly. I tell you what, you take your best shot.
Will I be broken? Will I heal with time? Where will I be when the last man dies? When the last man dies. Suns will set and suns will rise, but I still see my brother's eyes. Suns will set and suns will rise, but I still see my brother's eyes. Suns will set and suns will rise, but I still see my brother's eyes. Suns will set and suns will rise, but I still see my brother's eyes. Suns will set and suns will rise, but I still see my brother's eyes. Suns will set and suns will rise, but I still see my brother's eyes. Suns will set and suns will rise, but I still see my...
And that's all I did to improve a shitty fight scene. Proper music, proper pacing. That's it. Thanks for watching, and thanks for indulging me here in my silly little pastime. And keep your eyes peeled for some new content coming to this channel in 2025.